All right, take a look at this table and get used to what you see here. We're going to take a look at all of these individually. I'm going to let you know what each one of them does and how you use it. So not only can you get these right on the quiz, but also when you come in for your first lab, you understand what it is you need when I use the words, but also what you can use it for. All right, so first of all, this is called the tongs. This is a pretty typical tongs, right? Generally we use to hold stuff that we're getting too close to a fire that we don't want to do with our fingers, right? More specifically, it's called a crucible tongs, but anything like this with that flat end on it, we'll just call a tongs, right? So if I ask you to get a tongs, this is what I'm looking for, all right? Able to pick up anything that might potentially be hot. This guy, all right, is a tongs, but you can see it's definitely looking different. This is called a beaker tongs, right? You may or may not need to use this, but just as stated, right, you get a hot beaker and you don't want to touch that glass because, yep, it's warm. You got that guy to take a look at or to use. The other thing that you can use to hold hot devices is this hot mitt, right? So we have a ton of these in class. Again, especially glass, because you can't tell if glass is hot or not. We will use those quite a bit. All right, so getting on to some of our main utensils, if we want to put it that way. This is a beaker, right? 250 milliliter beaker. You could put a maximum of 250 milliliters of a liquid in here before it starts spilling out or anything else. These guys are kind of graduated. You can see that all those lines indicate 25 milliliters. That's not usually specific enough for us in most general situations, but we will have some of that we want to do or use in the future. If we say, hey, I need about 100 milliliters, this is the guy that can do it for you. But basically we do a lot of our chemistry in these guys, right? They're used to mix things, to transport things. A beaker is a very handy tool to use, just not as useful for measuring as we would like to think it is. The best tool for measuring liquids is this guy, right? This is called the graduated cylinder, and you can see it's much more graduated. It's much more precise, right? We're going to use the words precision and accuracy quite a bit as we get going. And so this is 100 milliliter. We got them, from 100, I got them all the way up to 1,000 and all the way down to 10. Depending on how much we need, the closer you are, the better the graduation is going to be. And when it comes to chemistry, the more specific you can be, the better off it is. Now, the one caveat to these guys is only liquids going in. We don't do any mixtures in them, no solids in them, one liquid, then wash it out and then reuse it, okay? The next guy is this guy right here, this big long snake looking thing. This guy's called a Bunsen burner, right? And so this Bunsen burner has two controls. One of them down here is the gas control. You don't need to play with that one very much. We pretty much want it wide open. The other control is right here, right? Clockwise to close it, counterclockwise to open it up. That is for the air, right? That's how we're going to adjust our flame. We're going to do it with the amount of oxygen we give it, not with the amount of gas we give it. Basically, our gas is on and off. Right now, it is off, right? Once we connect it to our gas outlet, that's off because it's perpendicular to the line. And if we want it on, we will make it parallel to the line, and you should hear it. I have the main gas shut off, so you can't hear it right now, but when you come in and do a lab, we'll definitely check that. All right, you want to be able to hear it, because if you don't hear it, there's no way you're going to light it up. The next piece, so once we get this set up and we hear the gas flowing, right, then we are going to strike it. Now notice, I could do that with one hand. You will maybe struggle at some point to strike, but that's kind of one of the goals of our first lab, is just get used to all this stuff. The thing that the Bunsen burner is on, this guy is called a ring stand. Okay, it's called a ring stand because it's a stand, and generally we have these nice rings on them, right? So this is a ring clamp, so you can clamp it anywhere on there, have it at any angle, and we should be good to go. And generally what we put on top of a ring stand so things don't fall, give it more stability, that is called wire gauze. So we can take something like a beaker, put it on, and be pretty confident that as we are heating it up, nothing is going to fall, nothing is going to break, right? So we see lots of setups that way, using a ring stand, Bunsen burner, wire gauze, beakers, things like that. Okay. Oh, one other thing I should say: don't heat that guy, right? You can heat that guy. Do not heat that guy. It's only for measuring liquids, okay? Up here on top of the ring stand is another type of clamp called the universal clamp. Right here, we just open and shut the jaw, right? So we use those when we just want to hold, you know, smaller things or single things that are definitely smaller than a beaker. So what I have it holding right now, this guy is called a volumetric flask. It's called a volumetric flask because right here, where my finger is, you can see that line. It does one thing really, really well. It measures one volume. So this guy is a 250 milliliter volumetric flask. So basically, if I want to make a solution, or eventually you make a solution, and we want 250 milliliters of it, right? We do the math, we get there. And if we fill up right to that line right there, we know we have exactly 250 milliliters. Now we could do that with a graduated cylinder, but the nape of this neck is much, much smaller than the neck going on this graduated cylinder. So we just get better precision from that guy. All right, so those are some of our main tools. Here are some of our other tools. This guy's called a mortar and pestle. Every once in a while we might have to use it to grind and crush different solids that we want to make a little bit finer. So we might use that every once in a while for some labs. This guy is called a watch glass. Use it a couple different ways, but one of the main ways is just like it sounds. We put stuff on it and watch to see if it evaporates or dries or loses, you know, or gains mass and stuff like that. We don't heat or anything with them. Every once in a while we might have a setup that looks like this, where we don't want something to escape here, and so we put this guy on top, so just a little bit escapes, but not too much. All right, so that's that guy. Right here, this guy is called an evaporating dish. So we can evaporate some things on the watch glass too, if we just want to have it happen over time. But if we want to do it a little bit more quickly, we can put this guy back on here and we can actually heat it up. And the reason we want to do it with that guy instead of the watch glass is this guy's made out of porcelain, and so it's not going to break, or at least not break as quickly. All right, so a few of our other things, we have some digital thermometers, pretty straightforward, but we'll use those quite a bit. Another piece of glassware is our test tube, right? This test tube already has some solid white substance in it. This is chemistry. We don't taste it, we don't, you know, smell it, we don't lick it, we don't do anything, because if you did, that stuff would hurt you. It is not salt, even though it kind of looks like it, or sugar. This guy is called a pipette. We'll use these to suck up and distribute like drops of different liquids. Generally with the experiments we do, we don't have to be specific. I do have some graduated where you can put exactly, you know, 10 milliliters of a liquid in there, or 5 milliliters or 2 milliliters, and pipette it into something. We won't have to be that specific. This is called the scoopula. This is how we take and scoop up most of our solids, you know, when we're trying to weigh them out from different containers. This guy, all right, this is a glass stir rod with a rubber policeman. So lots of times we can just stir things up, but if something gets stuck, we can use that rubber policeman in there to kind of like get the edges of different beakers or containers. All right, so those guys, you're gonna figure out where they are. The last thing I want us to look at is this big, tall looking guy. All right, this guy is called a burette. You'll see me use burettes, and you will definitely use them hopefully at the end of the year. So these are graduate as well, and they're even a better graduation than the graduated cylinders we saw before. Okay, they're more precise, which we want to use them. And so these guys, we open them up just like the gas lines. Parallel means open, and some liquid would start streaming out, and perpendicular means it's closed. Generally what we use under here, and lots of times, this guy is also a flask. This is called the Erlenmeyer flask, right? This is the one we use most of the time, okay? This and a beaker are almost the exact same thing. The difference is this guy is something that we want to swirl with our hands, okay? So when we want to do a mixture and make sure we can swirl it, this is oftentimes the setup we see. And the last little bit is, let's say we want to fill this guy up, all right? We use funnels in lots of different ways, but to get something big into something small, we got our funnel there. All right, so hopefully you use this and you understand some of the things that we're taking a look at, but all of this equipment you are going to use this year, hopefully.